Grace-based parents focus on trusting themselves and their families to God. They focus on that.
Yeah.
And they press into knowing God more and understanding His love deeper and His grace and how God views them as parents, as humans. So their kids are the daily recipients of the grace-based relationship that they're experiencing with God themselves.
It's beautiful.
See the difference?
Yeah.
So if I want to be like God to my kids and image Him well,
Sure.
then I need to dig deep into my relationship with Him so that grace is flooding me and all my jacked up stuff.
Yep.
So now my kids are just, they're the recipients of that experience daily overflowing.
It's beautiful.
Very different, right?
Yeah.
So the voice to their kids kind of mixes these things up. They're saying to their kids, you're a gift from God and His image bearer, and He loves and He accepts you for you. And they mix it with, now you may struggle with always doing the right thing, but you're forgiven and loved just the same. So you can live a life of gratitude and grace with others too, honey.
Welcome to the Everyday Disciple podcast, where you'll learn how to live with greater intentionality and an integrated faith that naturally fits into every area of life. In other words, discipleship as a lifestyle. This is the stuff your parents, pastors, and seminary professors probably forgot to tell you. And now, here's your host, Caesar Kalinowski.
All right, I can't believe it. It's finally feeling like spring, mostly. I was in New York this week. What a beautiful little short trip. I kind of went in and out. Didn't get to see everybody I knew, but there was one day that I had, and I wasn't working, and it was about 72 degrees Fahrenheit and beautiful and sunny, and I got to see Central Park again, right where we used to live, and everything was in bloom, and walk around the city. And I had not been back to New York in maybe 3 years. And maybe you know, if you listen to the show regularly, Tina and I used to live there for a couple years, training and coaching people in missional living, and we fell in love with the city, and we try to get back as often as we can, but with the COVID and all that, hadn't been back in a while. But I had a beautiful time. But they were saying the same thing. They were like, it's just been kind of winter here, winter, and today it's summer. They said, we never really had spring. Well, we're finally getting some spring here, and I'm excited about it. But I'm happy if it wants to leap straight to summer. That would be awesome. I don't know how you're feeling about it, where you're at. I know there's also some places. We were in Phoenix not too long ago, and it's already hotter than crazy. So, alas. Anyway, I hope that you are having a good week. Thanks for being here with me today. Pretty excited about what we're going to talk about. Before I do, can I just remind you to join us over on the Facebook group. Go to Facebook, search up everydaydisciple.com, or you can just go to everydaydisciple.com/Facebook, and we'll see you there, right? That'll take you right to the group. And we get to talk about the show there, update you, make sure you have all the links when there's training, free resources, all that stuff's there. Plus, you can give us ideas for new episodes, ask questions, help other people answer questions, you know, kind of like we love each other, like a community. So I hope you'll join us over there in the Facebook group. And I also hope you'll take a moment right now to share the podcast with someone. Text out a link, just share it at everydaydisciple.com/podcast. You can do that. All kinds of ways to find it. Anywhere you listen to a podcast, we can find it. But if you're hearing an episode and it hits you hard, this is helpful, hey, share it to someone you love, someone in your church, maybe someone in your small group missional community, maybe your spouse even. Just help us get the word out and keep getting more and more people equipped in gospel fluency and making disciples in everyday life. I would really appreciate it if you just do that. Pay it forward a little bit for us. Now, getting to today's topic, it seems that everywhere I go, and I mean it, like everywhere I go, just like when I was just in New York, this topic came up several times with several people, and I was only there for 48 hours. Everywhere I go, people are asking me questions about parenting and about our kids and how we did this and how we did that. And I've shared before, Tina and I are very blessed. Our kids are all grown now, and they turned out great. By God's grace, they are wonderful people. They love God. They love people. They're like our best friends, their best friends. And people know that about Team K, and they ask a lot of questions about that. And I think maybe because we're a little older, people want to know, how did that happen? And I want to let you listen to a conversation that I had with Heath Hollinsby, who, as you know, is the announcer of this show, and he used to co-host with me. He himself has 4 kids, and he's a great father, and they have a great family too. But he and I had a conversation about how do we parent with grace versus control or transactionally or using fear. If you don't do this, this is going to happen. We had a really great conversation kind of between 2 dads, and I just want you to listen to that now. So here it is. I know it's going to really encourage you.
Today, we're going to look at some radically different parenting styles that kind of reveal that while you might be a well-intentioned parent, your parenting style might actually not be producing the types of outcome in your children's lives and even their hearts that you ultimately desire. And as a father of 4 kids under the age of 8, I'm going to be taking a bunch of notes during this topic. This is going to be exciting. I can't wait to dive into this.
Yeah, it's a great topic, Heath. And I just want to say up front, though, one I'm certainly not an expert in,
Sure.
but I will say that I have a lot of experience in it.
Yep.
Meaning have not done it all perfectly, and here's the A way to do it, or the only way, but I have a lot of experience. So first off, let me set the table with a big level thought, okay? And an idea that we need to grab a hold of before we try to get into specific parenting stuff, okay? And here it is. It's that our view of God and our relationship with him and how we think he views us directly feeds into how we see our role as a parent and how in turn we will deliver the parenting goods or the parenting bads.
Yeah, sure. So unpack that a little bit more for me.
Okay, great. Again, how we see God and how, our theology about who he is and how we think he views us and our life and our choices, it's going to affect our parenting, okay? So if we have a flawed theology regarding who God is and how he sees us, his attitude towards us, our choices, how he sees our sin, then it creates a chain reaction of flawed decisions and actions in how we're going to parent our own kids. And when we miss the overarching dominant message of God's grace that permeates Scripture and the entire story arc of the Bible and Jesus' life, it unfortunately leads to 2 different, potential parenting black holes. And here's what they are. You can either become the judgmental parent,
Okay.
or you can become the legalistic parent. Do you see how that's working?
Yeah.
Like if we see God a certain way, right? So here we go. The judgmental parent spends most of their time making sure their family's better than the competition, better than the neighbor kids or their sister's family and their kids. And they live as sort of the monitor for everyone else and their behavior. And so their voice to their kids, as parents, is this sort of weird mixture of, well, God's watching you and so am I, mixed with, well, you may be bad, but you're better than so-and-so.
Yeah.
See how that flows right out. If we think that's how God is, he's just like watching us and he's, but because he's God, he's a pretty good guy. So he's like, well, you're not as bad as this guy.
Sure.
See, so that's the judgmental parent. They sort of sit as the monitor of everyone's behavior. Okay. Or you can be the legalistic parent, and the legalistic parents, they spin around and around trying to make sure their family, their children do everything right. Based on whatever they think that is, right?
Sure.
They sort of keep score of good deeds versus bad deeds, and they secretly believe their kids' behavior helps them sort of stack up brownie points with God.
Yep.
And so their voice to their kids is a mixture of, hey, you owe God, and so you can do better, so you better get busy.
Yeah.
And it's kind of mixed with, well, you may be bad, but if you try harder, you can ultimately please God. So these flawed theologies and perspectives on God and his character lead to some pretty common, yet pretty far off the mark parenting styles.
Yeah, and I don't think any parent intends to go there. Like, It's not like any parent sets out to be that way, but it is something that we fall into. And it's sometimes easier just to go like, you better stop this right now. Like if I jump into with my kid, it's just a quick fix rather than actually getting to the heart of parenting.
And that's kind of where we're going to head.
Yeah.
But, for now, I'm hoping that, you, me, folks listening to the show today, I hope they're getting that, see how they think God looks at them as the ultimate parent. Yeah. It's direct. I mean, just check it out. Your parenting mirrors it.
Yeah,
it just does.
All right, well, let's jump in. I know there's been a book that you've found really helpful. Let's unpack some of these different parenting styles and what each of them looks like for us.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So Tim Kimmel, he wrote that grace-based parenting book, and it's several years old, but man, it's the bomb. It's just so good. And so a lot of my thinking on this has been formed by him in that book, and it still is. It's like one of those read it, reread it kind of things. And so, our listeners know my kids are largely raised. They're grown now, but I'm still a parent, and now I'm a grandparent. but like you're raising younger kids, and
Yeah.
all the folks in our community are. And so I feel like I just need to keep growing at this.
Well, in a sense, in our community, you're able to parent my kids and the other kids that are new. We
Yeah.
just had Joseph and Lacey had a kid this week, and
Yeah. Shout out to little Andy. Huh?
yeah, little Andy.
Yeah.
But hopefully, like you stacking up and sharpening iron on this book also helps the way that you're always a parent to those that you're surrounded with.
Let's just kind of dig out a few of these sort of parenting styles that kind of flow out of flawed theology at times. And I'm not trying to slap you or me or, anybody listening, but see if any of these sound like you.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And so there's the fear-based parenting style.
Okay.
Okay. And that's like and I know I kind of grew up in churches like this where we're scared of Hollywood, we're scared of the internet, public school system, Halloween's evil, gay community, drugs, alcohol, rock and roll, rap, partying, neighbors,
all of that.
everything. Unbelieving softball team, can't join that. Got to join church. You know what I mean? It's just, liberals, conservatives, whatever your brand is, right? We're scared of everything, and so our fears determine our strategy for parenting. And you can
Totally see it.
Yeah, we just gotta. Fear drives it all, so let's box it all up. So that's one style, fear-based. This one is sort of the behavioral modification parenting.
Yep.
Where it's sort of the offshoot of fear-based parenting that assumes the proper environment and the proper information. You learn the right stuff and spend enough time in these types of places, proper education, and the absence of negative influences are going to increase your kid's chance of doing great. And the focus is all on like behavioral modification. No, it's just being better and doing better and sinning less. And that's the focus.
Yeah.
It's not on a heart level thing. It's and that's big within evangelicalism, hey?
Sure, absolutely.
Super is, okay? Then there's the image control parenting. This is sort of the checklist method of parenting that is part of the seduction of being legalist. It's image control, and it assumes that people will know that you're a really good Christian parent raising really good Christian kids, by your church attendance, by how your kids sit there with their hands folded in their lap. And we've all done it, right? That's the thing about these parenting styles. We might slip in and out of all of them.
We dabble in all of them.
Yeah. But, we've done it where it's like, you're in the car and you're having the big blow up before you go into, the church service. And then you're like, hey, we got to straighten this out because our image control needs to be in place before we even start walking through the parking lot because, we're running.
People are looking.
I can remember growing up and I went to a religious school as a kid, and one of my teachers, she would always compare our bad actions to her Johnny. Or whatever his name was.
Johnny, yeah.
Her Johnny, her Keith, whatever his name was. And she would say, well, my Johnny does this, and my Johnny wouldn't do that because I've taught him this. And we never met the guy, right? But it was always kind of real creepy. But she chose pictures of him. He was way older than us.
Sure.
But then I remember this was really, really sad. Her Johnny committed suicide like when I was in 8th grade or something.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it was like, it didn't work.
So much pressure.
Because behavioral modification, you just live under it. Sure. There's the duct tape parenting style.
I haven't heard of this one.
Yeah. Okay. So rather than trying to figure out how to fix their parenting issues, those duct tape parenters, they kind of cope by patching their problems.
Huh.
So temporary solutions, is what they're looking for when a crisis comes up. Something's wrong in the family, or kids. Why'd she do that? And they're usually running on empty. They're just too busy, too many things going on, too focused on what's happening. So when their perfect little, image breaks, they duct tape it and then move on. They don't really deal with it. You know what I mean? So it might come back or it might morph, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of a parallel in some ways to the duct tape families are the life support or the 911 parenting.
Huh.
That's what the author calls it, 911 parenting. Yeah. So
good.
What they do is it's kind of like the duct tape thing. When something blows up, you just patch it and move on. But with the added feature that a particular crisis is dominating their focus all the time.
Oh, fascinating. Moving from, there's always something.
Yeah, so it could be a little thing with the duct tape thing. It's like, why did they, they used a curse word, or they hit their sister a lot, or she's biting, or like she doesn't want to do her homework, or who knows? There's a lot of worse things. The 911 parenting is they move from crisis to crisis.
Yeah.
And I know right now I can see your eyes. You're like thinking, I'm not going to say
I know people.
Yeah, right. I've been people. Yeah. Okay. But here's the thing, and there's others, and we could keep breaking it down.
Sure.
Check out grace-based parenting. There's a ton more of that. But ultimately, what we want to have and what we want to get to, and we actually get to have is a grace-based parenting style.
Yeah.
And so we talked about the judgmental parenting style or the legalistic parenting, and then all those subsets of that just now.
Yep.
But here's the thing. Grace-based parents focus on trusting themselves and their families to God. They focus on that.
Yeah.
And they press into knowing God more and understanding his love deeper and his grace and how God views them as parents, as humans. So their kids are the daily recipients of the grace-based relationship that they're experiencing with God themselves.
It's beautiful.
See the difference?
Yeah.
Like, so if I want to be like God to my kids and image him well,
Sure.
then I need to dig deep into my relationship with him so that grace is flooding me and all my jacked up stuff.
Yep.
So now my kids are they're the recipients of that experience daily overflowing.
It's beautiful.
Very different, right?
Yeah.
So the voice to their kids kind of mixes these things up. They're saying to their kids, you're a gift from God and his image bearer, and he loves and he accepts you for you.
Yep.
Just like God's treating them. And they mix it with, now you may struggle with always doing the right thing, but you're forgiven and loved just the same. So you can live a life of gratitude and grace with others too, honey.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
See those two things? You're a gift from God and he loves and accepts you for who you are. And even when you screw up, remember you're forgiven and loved. And so you get to live out of gratitude.
Yeah.
That's the focus. Wow.
That's night and day.
It's it, right? I mean, please, God, I wish I'd have known a whole lot more of this, when my kids were littler, huh?
Yeah.
So, Heath, which of those? Okay, I'm going to assume you are the grace-based parent. Okay,
Yeah, keep assuming that.
Yeah. What are you hearing? Like, where's like the Spirit putting a finger on you? Like,
Yeah, I think the transaction-based parenting is
transactional based. Yeah, that's another thing we can slip into where everything has to be earned.
Yep.
Right.
That's the one I'm most prone to jump to. Like, well, if you guys will play together for 4 hours where we can get laundry done and the house clean, then we're going to take you out for ice cream. And so all you're doing is just band-aiding cancer. At that, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Because then they're just looking for the next time.
Everything has to be earned.
Yeah.
Oh, well, you didn't do this, so now you can't do that.
But it's one of those things too, where then for the rest of your life, you're chasing that, right? Well, then my view of God is maybe if he doesn't feel close to me. So maybe if I prayed more, maybe if I would read more.
If I stop this, then I'll get this from him.
Yeah. And
maybe
it's
if I start this, I'll get the raise I want at work or whatever, right?
Exactly. Rather
and then
than
we
just
pour that
trusting
back on our
grace.
kids. See, that's an icky loop, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It's crazy.
So the transaction one is the one that I'm most prone. We do keep the image. If I'm being honest, I feel that pressure of like when we go into social situations and I'm like,
Yeah, especially because right now, and I've been there for years, but you're working at a church.
yeah, for sure. So your kids have to be on the best behavior, right?
Oh my gosh.
And my kids are older and they're wild and we like that about them and they're adventurous. But oftentimes when we hear crying, it's like, oh, that was so-and-so. That was one of ours. That was, and so I try to keep
Heath and the kids. They're naked again.
Yeah.
Make sure they sit
Well,
in
the kids
back
are
row.
naked. Yeah. So
They're just going through a phase.
yeah. So I try to. There is this, in a sense, this kind of. If I'm being honest, I get on my wife sometimes of like, we have got to get our kids under control because they just make us look so bad, or they make us look. And
that's part of that kind of that transactional parenting style bleeds into that too, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Because it's like, listen, if you kids will just maintain after church, we're getting ice cream.
Yeah. So I can get through.
So
church.
now, what do they think church is, and who God is, and this community of supposed to be our family is? These are people you have to pretend in front of.
Yeah. Get
And
through
so is
the
God,
hour and
by
a
the way.
half.
Because God somehow, they say he sees and knows all things, but apparently if we pretend, we get by with it.
Yeah.
Now, is that not going to bleed into their little hearts and lives forever?
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so
and
this
see,
is
that's the thing too. The echo, I think, of this is not only, that big thought I was saying is like how we view God and think how he views us directly affects our parenting.
Yeah.
But how we parent, obviously, directly affects how our kids for the rest of their lives are probably going to end up seeing God.
Yep. Absolutely.
And what they think that relationship's about.
Well, one of the things I feel just called to say right now is, and we've done this before, is just, I mean, if you are listening right now, kicking yourself that you screwed up your kid's life and how they're going to view God forever, it's not too late. And
grace is so big, it actually goes back in time and repairs things. And we're going to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask next is that you mentioned Tim Kimmel's book, Grace-Based Parenting, having helped you with some really great thoughts that have been helpful when you look at how your parenting style, you really wish that was more grace-based.
And actually, it still changed it. You know what I mean? Huh. It just wasn't, I wish it had started earlier.
Yeah, I remember you talking about the 4 freedoms that he mentions in that book.
It's crazy, right? I mean, gosh, we could do like a whole series on this. But he talks about, and I'm going to share them, that there are 4 freedoms that we can offer our children. And I think freedom is just another way of saying grace.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And we can not only offer it to our kids, but how about we can offer it to each other? as couple or just as friends? How about as believers? How about we offer this to everybody? I mean, you'll see when I go through the 4, you're like, I think everybody needs that from us.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the first freedom, the freedom to be different. You know, God made all of our kids unique, just like he made us unique, and he delights in that.
Yeah.
If he wanted only one kind of human, he'd have made one kind. So that uniqueness that might bug the heck out of you at times,
Sure.
God actually delights in it. Like, what about getting that in your heart? So give them the freedom to be different. And, you know, if you're a parent listening to this, you know, I know you got a bunch of kids, so of more than one kid, you know how amazingly different they can be.
Yeah.
Tina and I still, even though our kids are raised, we go, did she grow up in the same house as the other two? Or did he, did he miss all those years when we kind of taught that, you know?
Yeah.
They're
Isn't that
just so
interesting?
different, man.
Well, I remember, I'm still carrying a lie that when I was a kid, I remember dyeing my hair for the first time when it was popular.
What color?
It was supposed to be blonde, but it turned my hair red. I looked like, it was bad. It was like an 80s, like really bad.
A lot of guys, I had the kind of orangey blonde.
But I remember somebody at the church getting on me about like, you're just trying to draw attention to yourself. And now most of, even the way I dress now is like blacks and grays and blues. Like I try not, there was no freedom. Different was seen as the enemy. It's like, you're just self-seeking. So this is free, man, to be different.
There it is, right? Grace gives the freedom to be yourself.
I love that.
Okay. And that doesn't mean yourself as long as you're perfect. That just means you and your quirks and the way you see the world and your kids and all that uniqueness. God delights in it. Okay. That's the first freedom. The next one is the freedom to be vulnerable. We got to give our kids the freedom to be vulnerable. Our children need to know that they can be open with their emotions, their joy, their pain, their fears. And you know what? And that when they do, that those emotions are safe with us. When my wife and I have talked about this a lot, and this kind of fed into our transactional based parenting was we were not, and it was weird how we were both raised this way.
Sure.
And we've talked a lot about it, and we've talked about it with our kids too. We weren't allowed to have emotions except one, happy. And not too happy, settle down. You know, like just settle down. My grandmother used to say, don't be so rambunctious. That's a great word. I'm going to re-get the hashtag rambunctious. I don't know how to spell it out there, but maybe you do.
I can't even say it.
Isn't it a great word? Just try. Go ahead and try.
Rambunctious.
Yeah. So we weren't allowed to, be sad or cry about something or be angry. Think about this. You ever hear this? Oh my God. Oh, you want to cry? Well, why don't you go to your room till you can be done crying, and then you can come out here and be nice with everybody.
Yeah.
Or I'll give you something to cry about. You know, like, that whole thing. Oh my gosh. I get a little burpy right now just thinking about it. Whoa.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so our kids, we need to give them freedom to be vulnerable. I mean, all the emotions that we have mirror God's emotions.
Yep.
They're a part of his glory. They're a part of what he's like. And they're all listed over and over and over in Scripture. And I'm not talking about just Jesus. I'm talking about the God of the Old Testament too, the dad, right? Our
absolutely.
dad. And so that means he has given us these emotions as triggers, as, hey, pay attention, as ways of expressing our heart, which is his heart.
Sure.
That's his desire. So emotions are a gift and a reflection of himself. And so grace makes it safe to be vulnerable.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And we fell down on that. And so the third one, we need to give our kids the freedom to be honest. You know, honest with us about their frustrations and their disappointments without fear that they're kind of risking our relationship. Like, how many people's kids can come to them and say, I didn't like the way you did that, or the way you talked to me yesterday really hurt me. I was thinking about it. Or you were talking to mom that way. Why'd you get so angry about, do they have the freedom to be honest with their frustrations and disappointments? Or how about their frustrations with their friendships?
Sure.
Or a teacher. Hey, listen to your elders. Like, do what she says. Yeah. You want to get a grade, don't you? You want a good grade, right? You want to go to college someday. You know, like they need to be able to be, hey, that sucked, or so and so spoke that bad about you, honey.
Yep.
You don't say like, well, sticks and stones. Like, no, they get to be free. They are free to be honest.
Yeah.
But we have to offer that, and we have to give it to them and model that. So none of us are perfect parents, but are we willing to hear the truth from our children about how they feel, and even if it's about how they feel about us?
It's great.
And I'm right now I'm flashing on, when our daughters were teenagers, and it's like, they were like, you're ruining our lives. You're ruining my life. Everything is perfect but you, Dad. I'm like, oh, I'm ruining your life. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to, they have freedom to be honest. That's how they're feeling.
Yeah,
that their emotions they're growing.
They're valuable. Yeah.
So, and then the fourth one is, we need to give them the freedom to make mistakes. And even though there are consequences for the choices they make, our love for them is secure. They need to know that, and it's not determined by their behavior.
Yeah.
And it won't change.
It won't change, yeah. That's so good.
That's
man.
probably the one that underlines all the other ones, right?
Yeah.
Like the freedom to make mistakes, and when they do, they don't sense any new distance between us. Like, oh,
Yeah.
Now that we also have the freedom to be honest. Hey, sweetie, when you said that hurt me.
Sure.
But I love you exactly the same. But I just want you to know that kind of hurt.
Yeah.
That hurt me. Yeah. That wasn't awesome. But point today, we need to give our kids the freedom to make mistakes. Okay.
Dude, those are some great grace-based tips.
So, yeah.
I'm thankful for Tim.
Yeah. Thanks, Tim.
Yeah, good. So what would you say are some steps that we could do to like course correct our parenting if we've been doing things wrong this whole time?
Yeah, well, I'm going to assume no one's doing it all wrong.
Sure.
Take the high road there, and But I know, Tina and I look back over our parenting, and we have for years. But when they start getting to that age where you're like, oh my gosh, we don't have many years left, you start to kind of reassess that, And here's what I'd say first. And I had an old mentor in my life. Listeners who follow the show a lot probably heard me talk about Pastor Johnny.
Yep,
that guy's just such a great guy in my life. But he said, listen. Seek forgiveness from your kids for stuff. When the Spirit taps you, like, hey, that wasn't good.
Yeah.
Like how that went down yesterday. Like you showed anger, you parented in anger, or you disciplined in anger. There needed to be discipline there, or you needed to bring a certain consequence because of the choice they chose, and they were clear on it and all that. He says you need to seek forgiveness when you know you blew it.
Yeah.
Like humble yourself and go to your kids, and you know what? That led us to do that at first, like with fear and trepidation, and try that.
Sure.
And I bet you right now, if we were to ask my kids, what are some of the best times, the most tender times you ever had with dad or mom? It's when you came to me with this and asked me to forgive you. It's just, it's so, you know why? Because it's like, now you're giving them the opportunity to show grace.
Yeah.
It's talking about grace-based parenting.
Yeah.
It goes both ways. So don't fear, and even if it wasn't just yesterday, but you go, like, I've been in a pattern of this. And I realize I've been doing this consistently because that's how I was parented.
Yeah.
Go back and explain it to them.
Yep.
And here's what I'd say, this is, the other thing is be specific about why what you did, or said in your parenting was wrong.
Yep.
Or why it was sin.
Yeah, call it out.
Right? Call it out. And here's the big league thing is if you can say, okay, here's why it was wrong, and here was my unbelief in that situation. I was not believing this to be true about you.
Yep.
Or I wasn't believing this to be true about myself in the moment, and I was trying to make you be God, or you to fix how I felt about me.
Sure.
Or I wasn't believing this to be true about God, like that he's great and he's in control and he's good. So I was like trying to control your choices, honey.
Yeah.
And I'm not God. And I'm sorry for that. And would you forgive me? So don't just go, hey, when I said that yesterday, I felt really bad. Give daddy a hug, sorry. Yeah. It's like, no, seek forgiveness and be specific, because then what you're actually doing is discipling their hearts.
Sure. And you're pointing to a bigger, like you're pointing to the perfect Jesus, right? Because you're going like,
exactly.
I'm a jack-up of a dad, but I'm trying to be like Jesus. I'm not, and I failed you, and Jesus wouldn't treat you this way. And so it also secures in them what Jesus looks like.
Great.
Okay. Good stuff. Wow. Love that guy. Heath, you're a good father, man. You're a good guy, and you got a good heart, and I love learning forward with you, even though my kids are a little older than yours. We're on that same journey, and I'm sure everyone has picked up on this. Your parenting never stops, so the things we talked about today still applies with adult kids as well. I'm having this conversation with Heath, and I'm going, this all still applies, and my kids are grown and having their own babies, so there you go. Hope that's encouraging. Now, as always, I want to leave you with the big 3 takeaways from today's topic, kind of give you the summary. Don't miss these, if nothing else. And we always have these printed out available for you. So if you're at the gym or driving or whatever, we'll give you the big 3. Just go to everydaydisciple.com/big3, BIG3. Everydaydisciple.com/big3, and we'll give you those. So here we go. Here's the first one.
Know that your children are a gift from God, given to you primarily for the purpose of receiving and expressing his grace and character in the world. They don't exist to make you look good or to fulfill your dreams. They were created to bear God's image, even though they may physically look like you.
Yeah.
Okay? Our kids are not there primarily for our glory and joy. They've actually been given to us and within our family to receive and express God's grace in the world.
It's beautiful.
And that's what you want to parent them towards.
Yep.
That's the win.
Yeah.
Not like how much money they make, because they can't take it with them and all that
sure.
stuff, right? Second thing of the big 3, believe that God loves you, as a parent, the same regardless of how well or poorly you've been parenting so far. So if you're hearing this stuff today, and their spirit's tapping some stuff, there's some conviction there.
Yep.
Just believe that you're loved the same. There's no condemnation from God towards you. You have his love and grace, and he desires that you know him more and live and parent out of your relationship with him.
That's great.
Okay, and third, kind of went over this earlier, but this is like a big takeaway. Seek forgiveness from your kids for the poor choices and responses that you've made with them in the past. Name the unbelief and the fear behind your actions or words so that your children learn the truth about God and help them understand that he's the perfect parent who's always full of grace and truth, even when you're not.
So good, dude.
I think that will serve you well. I sure hope so. Let this soak into your heart. Pray about all of it. Use this if your kids are little, or if they're in teen years, or even if they're fully grown like mine are. Doesn't matter. This will help you. And I think you'll see that it will change your relationships. And it'll take a lot of the pressure out of it. Give you some encouragement, give you some confidence in that. All right? Join me next week. We're going to keep diving deep into gospel and how it applies to all of life. Hope you'll join me. Talk to you soon.
Thanks for joining us today. For more information on this show and to get loads of free discipleship resources, visit everydaydisciple.com. And remember, you really can live with the spiritual freedom and relational peace that Jesus promised every day.